and welcome to the Fredi, Schiff, Levin lecture series, which is now in its 18th year at PAAM and graciously sponsored by the Levin family. We are honoring Fredi's legacy as a member of the Provincetown arts community by inviting artists, curators, authors, and scholars to speak at PAAM. We extend our gratitude to the Levin family and to Amy Davies and Provincetown Television for filming this series. Thank you for joining us online. Our entire series will be online this year. Tonight, we are welcoming Judith Stein, author of the biography Eye of the Sixties, Richard Bellamy and the Transformation of Modern Art, which earned praise in the New York Times for recreating in stunning, touching, and often humorous detail the chaotic, creative, still bohemian art scenes of the Provincetown in the 1950s and New York in the 1960s. Tonight, Judith will be giving us a little background on Bellamy and discussing the time he spent in Provincetown. Welcome, Judith.
Thank you, Leslie. I thought that my talk tonight is going to be in two parts. It's going to be talking about Bellamy and why we're even talking about him to begin with. What was he known for? And then after that, we'll look at how the great and important role that Provincetown had in shaping the man that he was. So may I have the first slide, please? Yes, I am supposed to report to Mr. Bellamy. I wonder what he's like. Well, it was an in-joke in the art world in the early 60s because Bellamy was such a cipher, such a beloved yet mysterious fellow that most people wondered what he was like. And the next, please. Dick ran the Green Gallery on 57th Street between the years 1960 and 1965. And the remarkable talent that he unearthed in that period was jaw-dropping. But what really sustained my attention for what became a 20-year journey as I was working on his biography, which was really a close look at the genesis of the artists who are the stellar stars of the 60s looking back from today. And without Dick, who knows what the shape the art world would have taken. But it was his singular attitude towards money that he simply wasn't interested in making it, even as the market for contemporary art exploded all around him. He was a latter-day Bartleby who preferred not to profit from selling art, a position that's hard to maintain as an art dealer running a business. The cartoonist Saul Steinberg once observed that the best art dealers have a fictional quality. And to me, Dick called to mind Sir Gawain, Huckleberry Finn, and Miniver-Cheevy. He performed life with tragedy and farce as his templates. In the process of writing Eye of the Sixties, I interviewed hundreds of people in the New York art world who knew him. And there were Leo Castelli, for one, who was his good friend, said there was nobody who was not enchanted with him. Some described his dark side. Others thought him a bodhisattva or a lay Jesuit. In the end, I found Dick to be most like Coyote, or resembling Coyote, the culture-giving trickster in Native American mythology. There we go. Eccentric, delightful, and gross. A shadowy figure with a capacity for intense pain and the rare gift of intuition. Okay, now we can go on. So the first part of this talk tonight, as I mentioned, will be looking at a visual history of the artists whose careers he launched, and underscoring why he was known as the EYE of the 60s. And then we'll explore the influence of Provincetown. So this is Bellamy in 1959, and gives you a good sense of who he was. Tousled hair. If you look carefully, you can see he's wearing 2 pair of eyeglasses, just plain sunglasses on top of his regular glasses. He's clutching daisies, and he's wearing a quite disreputable looking raincoat. He was, in his own definition, a beatnik, and 1959 was just the right moment to be a beatnik. And he, it was taken just 1 year before the opening of the Green Gallery, which opened in 1960. Let's have the next, please. How does someone who had the personality that Dick had and no money to speak of, how did he get to open a gallery on West 57th Street, like the main heartline of the New York art world? Well, you're looking at the 2 reasons that he was able to do that. This is Robert and Ethel Scull, he was the secret sharer in this gallery. He was a taxi magnate, and he also had a genuine passion for aggressive new art. And he had been buying abstract expressionism, but he could see that that moment was passing, and he wanted to be in on the ground floor. And what better way than buying into a gallery? So he was put together with Bellamy, and they made an arrangement. And so Dick Watt became the director of this gallery, secretly financed by Robert Scull. You may recognize Ethel Scull as the subject of that painting by Warhol, Ethel Scull 36 Times. That's owned by the Whitney and the Metropolitan jointly and gets shown between the 2 museums. Next, please. The Green Gallery was a modest affair. It was on the 4th floor of a building right on 57th Street between 5th and 6th. And a rickety elevator took you up there. And what you're seeing is the outer small gallery as you stepped off the elevator. And then you're looking into this long rectangular room. This is a drawing by Dan Flavin, and it's actually a way he mocked up the show that he was having, going to be having there, but that happened in 1964. But this just gives you a sense of what we're dealing with. His friend and colleague, Leo Castelli, had a gallery further uptown than this, and it was quite an elegant affair, quite different than this. This had been an industrial space, and the floor showed it's now fashionable. It wasn't particularly fashionable in 1960 to have such a gritty environment to show art. Next, please. The Green Gallery opened with a debut of an artist, Mark de Suvero. So you're looking at this shot of the gallery where he has these huge sculptures made out of timbers. He lived down in Fulton Street, down in the lower east side of New York. And they're not on pedestals, they're right on the floor. And that guy with the pipe that you see is Alan Caprell. He's just standing there for, I guess, for scale, and a friend of Bellamy's. It was a show that had a strong influence on the sculptor Carl Andre, who was taken with this use of wood as a material, and Richard Artsroger, who also felt if de Suvero could do this, he could do anything. And he began working with wood and painting in very novel ways. But they both looked to this show as a kind of opening up of the art world for them. Next, please. So in the first year that he had the gallery open, he did a lot of group shows, and this, I don't know if you can see that some of the artists he showed were Miles Forst, Myron Stout, George Siegel, various artists whom he knew, some of whom he knew from Provincetown. But it was a low-key affair. Next. But a year from then, this is the end of the second year of the Green Gallery, he had a group show, and you're looking at an installation of, on the left, in this image on the left, is a James Rosenquist painting. He had never shown in an art gallery before. The big piece in the center is called Slab, and it's by Robert Morris. And that was, no one had ever seen that kind of work before, or he had never showed before. Yayoi Kusama, whose accumulation is in the corner back there, she had shown her paintings, but this was the first time she was showing her sculpture. And then in Pride of Place, in the space between the windows, was Andy Warhol, one of his recent silkscreen paintings, $201 bills. And again, it was for sale for $1,200, and Robert Scull bought it. And the last time it changed hands several years ago, it sold for $43 million, which I'm sure, Robert Scull could not have imagined. Let's have the next, please. These are closer views of two of the works in that group show. There is Slab on the left, with some other works by Morris, and a different one of the Kusamas that was in that show. And there you can see the rough industrial floor of the gallery. And imagine walking into an art gallery on 57th Street just in 1962 and seeing this from the minimalist to the maximalist in a way, and with no preparation, with not knowing quite what to make of it all. The next, please. There's that Rosenquist that was in this group show, and by January, he himself he was given his painting debut in the Green Gallery. Next, please. This is just a peek into Rosenquist. This painting on the right in black and white here in the image is called Zone. And what he did was to use fragments of vintage magazine advertisements. You can see it, the angel skin there. Then make a sketch from it, and then go ahead and paint it. And that was the way he was working for the time that he was showing the work in the Green Gallery. It was quite popular and began to give the Green a reputation for the growing understanding that there was something that critics were calling pop art. Next, please. In May of '62, there was a show of George Siegel, who was a sculptor. He had begun as a painter, and many of the artists at the Green made that transition from painting to sculpture. But it was the first time he showed his cast sculpture. This one is called Man at a Table, and there's a little story behind that. He was teaching like most of the artists, they were living hand to mouth. He had a teaching job, teaching art and adult education. And one of his students was the wife of someone at Johnson & Johnson, and they had just introduced a medical material that when for making casts of people who had broken their legs. And when dipped in water and wrapped around the body, it would harden and make a very quite strong cast. So one July in 1961, Siegel decided to, I wonder if I can make a cast. His wife put straws in his nose and then wet these strips and begin to wrap him like a mummy. The only thing is, not having ever made a cast before, he forgot to use any kind of lubricant between his skin and the plaster. And getting it off was quite a painful process. And that is, but he understood the power of the forms, this ghost-like form that resulted, and he made it his signature material. Next, please. That summer, right after Siegel's show, Dick gave the keys to the gallery to Oldenburg and his wife Patty, and he took off for Provincetown. So Claes Oldenburg and Patty spent the summer in the Green Gallery constructing these outsized pieces of food and other works. He had a studio of his own downtown, but he needed the space of the Green Gallery to work in. Next, please. And this is a shot of the whole show taken from above by Rudy Burkhardt. Next, please. So pop art is really quite taking life and bringing a great deal of attention to the green. This is Wesselman, Tom Wesselman's. He had a solo show in 62. And what you're looking at is two views of the same work, with the cabinet closed where you see the star and open on the left. And truly, this had everything in it and the kitchen sink. And it was very much some of the themes of the other pop artists we're working with, of the commercial products, food products, bread, bananas, beer, and playing with the Mondrian image and juxtaposing it to these very plebeian things. This too was a show that people quite loved and bought the art from. Next, please. In January of 63, Dick did a group show. And he liked group shows because he thought, well, it would bring in people who know one of the artists, and then when they come in to see the person they know, they'll get to see some of the other artists that perhaps they don't know. And if you can see who was in that show, it was Kusama and George Siegel and Donald Judd and Robert Morris and Larry Pooms. One of the people who went to the opening was Jack Twerkoff, who was a respected abstract expressionist, a man in his early 60s, who came home from seeing this and wrote in his diary, went to the Green Gallery, where tomorrow is yesterday, where yesterday was the beginning of ancient history. So many people had this sense of the world of art shifting underneath them and changing so rapidly. And certainly, were you to have walked into that exhibition, you would have had a similar reaction to Twerkoff's, who had an educated eye, or you might have been just, more than nonplussed. Next, please. These were some of the works in that group show at the very beginning of 63. Another Kusama work of accumulations. In the center, the image is Donald Judd. It's his first freestanding sculpture. He had begun as a painter. And in fact, in this exhibition, I don't have a picture of it, are two wall reliefs. So he was right at this moment of transition from works that hung on the wall to things that sat freestanding on the floor. And of course, no pedestal. And Kusama and Judd were close friends, and they lived in the same building. And there's a funny interview with Judd where he talks about helping Kusama stuff these kind of, preobic polyps that are that she fills her art with. She said she was scared of this shape, and therefore by making it over and over and over again, she was hoping to get on top of her phobias. Anyway, it's fun to think that somewhere in there, Donald Judd was stuffing them, helping her with it. The other work in this image is by Dan Flavin. And it's neither a painting nor a sculpture. But he's fascinated with the power of electric light as an element, a sculptural element in artwork. And we will see him, as his work developed, take turns to a point where he was using neon tubing. Next, please. Morris had his own debut. He was been in two of the group shows. And there you see Slab, once again, brought back for a reprise. And in the left corner of the image, you see a tall, narrow box, pedestal, and a dark box on top of it. And that's what you can see on the right. So the white is just the stand for it. And what that piece of sculpture is box with sound of its own making, in which it's exactly that. He had a tape recording of him working on making the box, the sawing, the hammering, whatever and it took about 3 hours or so. And he embedded that tape inside the box. And so if you came near it in the gallery, you could hear the sound. I know that John Cage may have been the only one of his contemporaries who listened to the entire tape. He went to his studio to make sure he could hear the whole tape. What this is conceptual art. It's art about art. And this was, so we've seen the Green Gallery really being at the forefront of pop art, of minimalism, and here, conceptual art. Next, please. Robert Morris here, it's his eye box. So it's his ego box. He's grinning. And a couple of different references here. It was a smallish, that big box that hung on the wall. And Bellamy loved to tell people that it was very well hung. And the references here, Morris was working in performance art, and in one of his pieces, he hid inside a large box, and he actually hurt himself seriously when hurt his head when the box tipped over. In any case, that's one of the references. The other one is to the orgone box, which was a fad in the 60s, developed by Wilhelm Reich, a psychiatrist who had an idea that if you sat in this box, that orgasmic energy would sort of be a life force for you. Anyway, those are some of the ideas behind it. And if you want to know more, I do write a bit more about it in the book. Next, please. And then there is op art. And Larry Poons was a musician who, when he first turned to the visual arts, was doing kind of abstract expressionist painting. Almost everybody who was an artist at that turning of the 50s into the 60s was working with the strategies of action painting and or abstract expressionism. But Poons began to work with complementary colors and the zing that they gave each other when they were juxtaposed, and patterns. And his paintings were very enlivened. And this was a show that he had in 63 of paintings in this mode. Next, please. Donald Judd finally had his own solo in December 1963. So these were all freestanding pieces. They were all painted that same color. I didn't mention it, that red-orange that you saw in the earlier image. And Dick was very gentle with his artists. He knew that Judd was working on art, and he said earlier, and he said, well, when you're ready, let me know. And self-effacing to a fault, he said to Judd, well, don't you want to show with Leo Castelli? And Judd said, well, I'm working on something that's in the process of becoming, and I like to show it with you in a gallery that's not so fixed in its own sense of becoming. And there, that is an actual installation shot from 1963. Next, please. By this time, minimalism was just gaining a name for itself. This is Robert Morris's second solo show. If you were to go to Dia Beacon today, you would see this exhibition recreated because it was understood as such an important show of Morris's work and of the art of the 60s. It's almost hard to see, but in the very corner, can you see a triangular piece just tucked into the corner? That was his conceit, and Levin, who had a show after him, also took the idea of putting a piece right into the corner. Leo Castelli and Bellamy were friends and colleagues, and it was I was able to interview Leo not too long before he passed away, and he told me, he said that Bellamy was a fantastic character. He actually was the person who first understood what the minimalists were doing. He discovered them, and so I got to know them through him. There was nobody like him. I certainly consider myself his pupil, although he is younger than I am. Being first in the history of art doesn't always get you into the history books. And if most people who would think about the dealer most associated with minimalism in the 60s, they might say Leo Castelli, but it was Castelli who picked up the artists after the Green Gallery closed, like Robert Morris. Next, please. In the fall of 1964, things had changed at the Green Gallery. The Sculls had really moved from basically, wealthy people who were not particularly known in the social world to, because of this cutting-edge art collection, to be social darlings and very much in demand in the social circuit. But Dick was not such a good businessman. And by this time, the Sculls had had enough and withdrew support. So this is the beginning of the last year of the Green Gallery. Lucas Samaras had a very unusual, to say the least, sense of what interested him and his aesthetic sense. So that's a book with nails and scissors and razors and so on. It was in an earlier show, in a group show at the Green Gallery. What you see on the right is Samaras's bedroom, which he had taken from his home where he lived with his parents and completely reinstalled in the Green Gallery. They used the window of the gallery as the window, and then they did the dimensions to match his bedroom. So there was his bed, and he used it to store his raw materials and shopping bags, and some of the art that he had made that had not sold was, piled up all around. This really is the first instance of installation art. Today, it goes almost without saying that somebody might take their personal environment and bring it into a public space of an art gallery. But as best I know, this was the first. It was for sale for $17,000, and there were no takers at this point. Next, please. Okay, there is the shots of Dan Flavin's debut of his neon work in the late fall of 1964. The work in color on the right is called a primary picture. The primary colors, and it's also in a landscape form, which is the primary form of a painting as opposed to the portrait form. Dick did not sell anything from here, and by this time he was really not functioning very well in support of his artists. And I know, and Flavin for one, was really distressed by the fact that Dick just was not fully engaged with promoting his work. Next, please. Dick brought on an assistant for the last bit of the last year, David Whitney, who was the partner of the architect Philip Johnson. And David would go on to have his own gallery later. And so David put together this show with Dick's favorites, artists. And this is the artist Lee Lozano. You can see the work behind Dick's fuzzy head behind that, and this drawing saying, "Be this occasionally." She was an artist who, by the time she died at the very end of the 20th century, was hardly known at all. And anybody who had known about her earlier, her reputation had passed away. And then the 21st century and the taste of the 21st century. And Lee Lozano, not long after she died, was rediscovered, and people were gaga about her work, and still are. You can find it now internationally. She gained an international audience. Next, please. This is one of the works that was in that show. It's called Ream, and this sense of the projectiles and the violence that is in some of her works was part of her personality, and Dick was in sympathy with that personality. Next, please. When I was putting together this the images for tonight, I fell on this. What you're looking at is a slightly blurry image of John Waters and Ann Temkin, curator at MoMA, and Lee Lozano's painting of a hammer. And I'm going to suggest that on your own, you either follow that address, or just simply Google John Waters, Lee Lozano, MoMA, because it's a short, I think it's a 10-minute interview with John Waters in which he talks about why he's so crazy about this painting and Lee Lozano, which I know you'd enjoy. The gallery closed in the summer of '65. Had it gone on for another year, Lee Lozano would have had a solo show. She was on target, but that was not to be. Dick lived until 1998. And the last thing I want to suggest, that is to say, I don't want to suggest that the rest of his life had no meaning between 1965, when the Green Gallery closes, because he transitioned into a different kind of an art dealer. But I chose for tonight because to answer that question that Roy Lichtenstein's character asked, what was he like? This is what he was like. This was his most prolific creative time, using his eye to going to studio visits, listening to artists, recommending other artists, and launching them first in group shows and then in solo shows. So we'll leave his career here and we'll switch to Provincetown. Next, please. This is the Dan Flavin. It's called Holy Mother Loaded with Grace, Please Help Dick. It's a piece that he made in honor of Dick. It's with Pope brand canned tomatoes and a little devotional electric light there. But Dick goes out of the spotlight of a discoverer of artists at this point of 65. And now, next, please. Okay, this is about his life, and we'll look. Dick's mother is in the center image. She was Chinese. She was born in China. Her parents are on the left. Her father, Dick's grandfather, was a minister who was sent to Germany for his religious, got his Doctor of Divinity there. They were highly educated people who believed, very unusually in China in 1900, that their daughters should be educated as their sons were. And so Lydia Hu was sent to the United States to study medicine, and with the understanding that she would come back to China and minister to her people as a doctor. But in medical school, she met another doctor, Bellamy, Curtis Bellamy, whose people were from Kentucky. They had been farmers, but their ancestors had been around America since the Revolutionary War. And there you see them with their one child that they had, Dick. Next, please. What a cute kid he was. And that must have been a picture that was sent home to the parents in China, because his mother never did see her parents again once she left at age 16 to come to the United States. And there he is with at different ages. It was his closeness to his mother. She was kind of the culture giver in that family. She read widely. She always was suggesting books. There was Chinese furniture. There were jade figurines. And those were some of the first art pieces that Dick ever saw. Next, please. This is a terrible image because I had to shoot it from a yearbook of Dick in a high school, Wyoming high school. He grew up in just outside of Cincinnati in the suburbs in little town Wyoming. and he's clowning. Being a clown was something that he developed in it as he went through school in the Midwest. He looked like no one. His eyes, he had his mother's eyes, and he was a skinny Marink. He was not a very strong-looking fellow. He was liked by the guys in his class, but bullying and teasing was second nature to them. But he, in a way, preempted a lot of that through his shenanigans. And here he is just playing around. I presume that the image on that draft table there is his own. Next, please. Unfortunately, his beloved mother died of a long-term heart ailment when she was 41 and he was 17, 18. This is a picture of his father's wedding to his second wife. And if you ever saw a picture of an unhappy adolescent, this is one of the saddest ones. You knew that he could not stay in that house after his father brought home a new wife who was as different from his mother as day from night. Next, please. And so he took himself to Mexico. And somehow, when you write somebody's biography, there are so many unknowns. It's kind of like, a string bag with all those holes, and you just kind of weave the strings around the holes and make a plausible story. So somewhere in Mexico, he met Peter Hunt, who was a businessman, an artist from Provincetown, and they hit it off. And Hunt apparently said to Bellamy, "If you ever come to Provincetown, I'll get you a job." Well, what you see in the center one. So that's his. Peter Hunt became. He was well known during the war because he, taking old furniture and giving it new life was a patriotic duty in a way that recycling during the war. And he became very well known. And to Peter Hunt became a verb in the 40s. This whimsical piece of furniture here is, we don't know who did it, because Hunt hired young people to work with him, and he encouraged their sense of whimsy. And the book on the right is a young adult novel that was written about just the time that Bellamy was first came to Provincetown, age 20, and he became Peter Hunt's houseboy and worked in his shop. Next, please. And of course, if you're in Provincetown and if you're hanging out with artists, you couldn't help but know that Hans Hofmann's semi-public critiques were something that you could come in and listen to. And Dick would go to these critiques and take notes and listen. And it was either there or somewhere else in Provincetown that he met the woman who would become Mrs. Bellamy. Next, please. Just think of that sad teenager in Cincinnati, and this cool guy wearing he-she beads and a muscle shirt and jeans and a strange haircut. This is because he has he fell in love with a woman who was never Hofmann's student, and she was a self-taught artist, but she was living in Provincetown with her biracial daughter, and Dick fell in love with her, and he fell in love with the little girl. Next, please. Here she is, Nancy Christopherson, and the daughter whom they nicknamed Pony. There is Dick and his daughter. He considered her his daughter near the piers in Provincetown. Next, please. Nancy Christopherson was a friend of Deanne Arbus, and that's the woman you see on the left. And it was Alan Arbus, her husband, who took the strip in the center, which shows Nancy and Deanne and one of the Arbus girls and Pony. And that's a picture of Dick Bellamy taken by Deanne Arbus at about age 20, 21. Next, please. So Provincetown opened up a world of art to him, getting to know people who introduced him to people. And suddenly you can imagine him sort of feeling, if not saying, these are my people. And he felt at home. Nancy made a film in Provincetown in 1949. That is Dick. It was a film based on an opera, Gounod's opera of Peleus and Melisande. It does not survive because she used outdated film stock, and she shot it, and then when they developed it, there was a big streak down the middle, and it did not survive to us. Next, please. The fellow in profile in the center is Miles Forst, and he was a friend of Nancy's who introduced Bellamy to him, the Forst, both Barbara and Miles Forst, and they became lifelong friends. This is a Provincetown gathering, circa 1946, 7, something like that. Next, please. This is before Dick was arrived. Dick had a karmic ability to be in the right place at the right time. And it was that in the second year that he was in Provincetown, and he was living in Provincetown, the Forum 41 was held, which was the first real showing of abstract expressionism in the United States, and it happened in Provincetown. It's a long story and time for another time. But you can look at some of the paintings in the background, and those were some of the abstract art that was on view in the show that was part of Forum 49. And they had poetry readings and talks and film screenings, and it was an postgraduate education for Dick, who knew a few things from having Cincinnati was rather advanced in showing contemporary art in the 40s. But being in Provincetown just educated him. Next, please. The summer of Forum 49, and one of the paintings in that was the painting in the lower right-hand corner of this. This is the open page spread from Life magazine of August 8th, 1949, which had the provocative heading, Jackson Pollock, is he the greatest living painter in the United States? And there he is, looking straight at you. And, most of the people who went to Forum 49 did not think so. And when the show was over, they still had that number 17, that painting. They didn't have to return it yet. And the organizers put it in the window of this former garage and had a little box where you could vote. Was he the greatest living painter? Well, 700 people said no, of the vast majority of the people who answered this. So particularly artists who had a vested interest in whatever art that they were most fond of had a real hard time with Jackson Pollock's art here at this point in time. Next, please. And I think I'm going to ask the next one after this. Okay, so in my book, I have two chapters on Provincetown, one 48, 49, and another one on 57, 58. And in the summer of 57, Robert Frank, who was just getting together his book, The Americans, first published in France, and was about to make his major reputation as a photographer, decided to try his hand at making a movie. And this is a still showing Dick Bellamy and Mary Frank. And if we can have the little film clip that we prepared, this is Mary Frank. She's been writing letters and putting them in bottles to throw into the ocean, hoping that someone would find them and come to her. And you see her putting her note in the bottle and throws it into the ocean. And then one of the people who finds this bottle in this non-scripted script is Dick Bellamy, who comes and finds her and is awestruck. And he is acting as he prepares to throw himself on top of Mary. The story of this film is that almost none of it survives, unfortunately, except little pieces of it. And the next part of the show is now all these people have found their bottles and they're coming around. And one of the people who finds the bottle is, she's inundated, coming up out of the water is Alan Capro playing Poseidon. And they had draped him with heavy chains and seaweed and cloth. And this is no joke. He almost drowned. It was so heavy that he fell over. And anyway, basically, that is what's left of this delightful film. And the next, please. There are some wonderful pictures that survive of that summer. There is Mary Frank at a party that she threw flour in her hair, crepe paper flyers around, flowers, little Cézannesque still lifes on tables. Next, please. Same party, black and white. And there is Dick Bellamy with his sunglasses, probably hung over and shirtless. He was working at a gallery that summer. Anything you could do in Provincetown to make money, he did it. Scallop fishing, house painting, lobster fishing, anything that where he could support himself enough to get by. On the left, that's Myron Stout sitting next to Lois Karp, Ivan Karp's first wife. And next, please. It was Ivan who took this picture of Dick, who obviously had been clamming or digging for mussels, and because he's all got the sand and the ocean on his feet. And there he is, just taking his ease with next to one of Miles and Barbara Forst's children. Next, please. A party a little later, Tony Vever's house, Elsbeth Vever's in the front, Dick in the middle, and Emilio Cruz there, all friends and Provincetown hands. Next, please. The story that I'm telling is a long story, and I don't have the time to we didn't book the time for me to tell that story, but I'm going to show you some of the images. And this is the Sun Gallery, which had shows that lasted a week. This was a show of Lester Johnson's, and inside you can see a guy in sunglasses. It's Dick Bellamy. Next, please. Red Grooms was another presence who had come to Provincetown to work with Hans Hofmann, and these are some of the events that he did in Provincetown. Next, please. Dick was a star in Alfred Leslie's Pull My Daisy, which he made with Robert Frank. When Dick first met Alfred Leslie on the pier in Provincetown in 1948, he thought he was a Portuguese fisherman because he had that mop, curly mop and everything. Anyway, they quickly figured out each other and they became friends for life. And that is Jack Kerouac to the side. If you have never seen Pull My Daisy, which is the quintessential film of the Beat generation, please do so. You can find it for free online. One version even has Italian subtitles, but it is Jack Kerouac's voiceover. Next, please. There are more stills from the Pull My Daisy. Dick playing a bishop. It's based on a third act of a play by Jack Kerouac. Next, please. Alice Neal was in it. I'm showing you her portrait because maybe you're going to have seen or will see the show at the Metropolitan Museum of her work. Next, please. Robert Frank made a movie called Sin of Jesus. That's George Segal. It was his farm that it was filmed on near New Brunswick. There is Dick, who played an angel. Next, please. Emilio Cruz was in it, as was Red Grooms, also angels. Next, please. And Frank made a film called End Here in 1963, in which Dick and Myron Stout, the wonderful Provincetown painter who Dick championed for all of his life, was and would have shown much more, but Myron painted so slowly that he couldn't get the works for a full show. You see him at a bar drinking, and it was his alcoholism that did play a part in his difficulty in keeping galleries going. But later on, he was able to get on the other side of that with the help of some of the women in his life. And may I have the next, please? And many tales to tell of the life after 1965. This is Robert Mapplethorpe's portrait of Dick, who became the eminence grise of the art world. European dealers came to see him. He knew everybody and was most gracious in connecting people together. And the next, please. Yoko Ono, he sold her first work and knew John Lennon. Here's a postcard from them to him. Next, please. Bruce Nauman, he was an early champion of Naumann's. Next, please. Michael Heiser and land art, as well as, next, please. This is at the Menil where you could see it. Next, please. And this in Dia Beacon. Heiser told me that this would never have happened were it not for Dick's behind the scenes work. Next, please. Walter de Maria's Lightning Field. Likewise, Dick did a lot of the initial work in getting this up and going. And next, please. Dick, in a later gallery, gave employment to these two artists, Jensen Say and Linda Montano, who chained themselves together, roped themselves together for a year, and he gave them work installing lights in his gallery, which you can see on the left. Next, please. Okay, that was too brief a run through, but this is, in fact, we've come to the end of this survey of this life. This is a still from modern times showing Charlie Chaplin, and if you remember seeing the film, He's walking down the street, and a truck with an extra long load with a red flag hanging out to warn drivers turns a corner, and the flag falls off. And he picks up the flag and he starts waving it. Hey, you've forgotten you've lost your flag. Meanwhile, a protest march is turning another corner, and they come up behind him. And suddenly, Chaplin is leading the parade. And he didn't want to, but he found himself in that position. And some of Dick's friends have mentioned this scene to me. They think about it. Larry Poons talked about Bellamy as the wrong man at the right time. I mean, he was there when the art world that we know it as we know it today was inventing itself, and he had it all in his hands, and then he opened his hands as if it were sand that he was not interested in personally profiting from art or building a reputation for himself. But it was my great pleasure to poke around, get to talk to people, and begin to fill in some of the blanks in the story of Dick Bellamy's life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judith. That was great. We don't have any questions, so we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.